Just a quick reminder to honourable members not to acknowledge people, of course, that are visiting. We're happy they could come and visit us today, but the rules state that we're not supposed to acknowledge them. It happened on 3 different occasions during SO31s today, so I just want to remind honourable members of that. Oral questions, question orale, the honourable leader of the official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Bloc voted in favour of another tax increase by the Liberals to take money from Quebecers and give it to the centralizing government of this Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister thanked them literally after the vote with a thumbs up. Is that the Liberal Bloc coalition? Less money for Quebec home builders, less money for Quebec entrepreneurs, less for doctors and entrepreneurs, and more for the federal Liberal colossal government. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our government understands the importance of fairness. We understand that a teacher should not pay higher taxes than a multimillionaire. We also understand that our decision will give $3 billion to the province of Quebec, additional money that the province can use to invest in health care. But the Conservatives don't like health care. They don't like investments by the government.
Leader of official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this tax increase supported by the Bloc takes money away from doctors, forcing Quebec doctors to move elsewhere. The regions of Quebec will have fewer doctors during a cost of living crisis. The Bloc has voted to tax farmers more. The Bloc has voted for a tax on home builders. How is it that the Bloc and the Liberals want to tax Quebecers more to give more money to a big centralizing government in Ottawa? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers understand the importance of fairness. They understand that it is very important for a nurse to not pay higher taxes than the ultra-rich. They also understand that we need revenue to invest in health care, in daycares, and the province of Quebec needs that revenue as well. That is why the province has decided to do the same thing we are doing federally.
Bravo. Le chef de l'opposition.
9 years ago, the Prime Minister promised that taxing and spending more would make everything fair. Since then, Canada's had the worst growth in the G7, the worst in Canada's history since the Great Depression. Housing costs have doubled, rising faster than any other G7 country. So 76% of youth believe they'll never be able to afford a home. 1 in 10 people are at eating at food banks in Toronto, where there are 256 homeless encampments. Haven't the Liberals learned that taxing away doctors, taxing away home builders, taxing away the entrepreneurs who make paychecks is economic wackoness?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we all certainly learned something yesterday. After 8 weeks of dithering and evasion, we learned which side the Conservatives are on. They had a chance to be very clear and say a teacher or a welder should not pay tax at a higher rate than a multimillionaire. But they just couldn't help themselves. At the end of the day, the Conservatives are always on the side of those at the very top and always against working people. That's what we saw yesterday.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the member mentions welders. Welders start businesses. Among the 300,000 small businesses that are targeted by this tax, according to the minister's own published documents. So those welders will pay a 66% tax on their investments, the same welders that build the homes that we're going to need.
Order. I'm having trouble hearing the question. I'm having trouble hearing the answer. So I'm going to ask honourable members to allow the questions and answers to happen. From the top, the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the member mentions welders. Welders incorporate. They start small businesses, welding businesses that build things, welding products that go into apartment complexes in which people live. So when the member taxes the small businesses that help us build the housing, she not only kills jobs for those welders, she actually kills housing when we are in a housing shortage. How could the minister possibly think it's a good idea to tax home building in a housing crisis and farmers in a food crisis?
I'm going to ask for the quiet in return. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, for one thing, the Conservative leader should get his facts straight. Of course, what we are talking about is a 2/3 inclusion rate, not a 2/3 tax rate. But he never bothers to actually get his numbers straight. What he also doesn't bother to do is to actually stand on the side of working people. He has been faking his support for workers, but yesterday workers learned where he really stands, and that is not with them.
That's right. That's for sure.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, taxing farmers during a food crisis, taxing home builders during a housing crisis, taxing away doctors during a healthcare crisis, and taxing small businesses during an economic growth crisis is economic vandalism. And nothing less, Mr. Speaker. That is precisely why this minister has given us the worst growth in the G7, the worst growth for the next 40 years projected for the OECD, and 256 homeless encampments in her hometown. Isn't that the predictable result of her disastrous policies?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, do you know what the average income in Ottawa Carleton is? Because I do. It is $58,400. The average person in Ottawa Carleton could only dream of earning $250,000 in a given year. But the Conservative leader thinks his average constituent should pay tax on their hard-earned salary at a higher rate than someone who is earning more than $250,000 in capital gains alone. Whose side is he really on?
Exactly.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. The Liberals want to tax the capital gains of the rich, but their simplistic definition of who the rich are catches Quebecers like small investors and individual entrepreneurs. The Bloc Québécois will propose amendments to correct this. For example, to offer homeowners who are not real estate speculators access to a higher one-time exemption rather than the annual exemption of $250,000. Will the government commit to working with us to avoid raising taxes on the assets of Quebecers who are not ultra-rich? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you for the question. Mr. Speaker, I would like to begin by thanking the Bloc for their vote yesterday for tax fairness. They understand, like Quebecers understand, the importance of solidarity, social solidarity, the importance of fairness. They understand that a teacher should not pay higher taxes than the ultra-rich. It's very unfortunate, but the Conservatives don't understand that. I'll wait for a little bit of silence. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. It's not complicated. Raising taxes on the ultra-rich? Yes. Raising taxes on the savings of the self-employed who have invested everything in triplex? No. These people have nothing to do with the real estate bubble. They have nothing to do with the difficulties of first-time buyers.
Vai, voyons.
Come on.
George. Voyons, no.
Come on. Order, please. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The honourable member for La Prairie can start the question again. It's not complicated. Raising taxes on the ultra-rich, yes. Raising taxes on the savings of a self-employed person with no retirement fund who has invested everything in triplex? No. These people have nothing to do with the real estate bubble. They have nothing to do with the difficulties of first-time buyers. So the Liberals have a choice before them. Work intelligently with us or hurt Quebecers who aren't ultra-rich to score political points against the Conservatives. Will they make the right choice?
C'est mercredi.
It's Wednesday. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, thank you for the question. I want to highlight once again that we've made an important decision. The House has supported an important measure, a measure for fairness, a measure that will fund investments that are so important for Canada, important investments for Quebec. The province of Quebec will receive $3 billion thanks to this measure. I think healthcare will really benefit. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, the housing crisis is everywhere. Seniors are sleeping in their cars. People aren't able to afford skyrocketing rents. A recent report tells us why. Affordable housing is disappearing at an alarming rate throughout the country. It's simple. There's little or none. The Liberals and the Conservatives have abandoned social and affordable housing. It wasn't profitable for their speculator friends, it seems, but people need a roof over their heads. What are those two old parties good for if they can't even guarantee a basic need, housing? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for his question. I'd like to remind him that there's a measure in the most recent budget, and it was highlighted by different stakeholders. We've put $1.5 billion to take housing off the market, to ensure and reserve affordable housing off the market for people who need them. That's what we've done, and we'll work with all nonprofits, with municipalities, to increase the number of affordable and social housing units. Thank you.
Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Tenants at Thorncliffe Park and across the country are rising up against corporate greed that is causing skyrocketing rents and resulting in evictions and rising homelessness. Renters cannot keep up with the costs of these unfair corporate practices, and the Liberals themselves are partners in making these rental units unaffordable. This is a violation of the human right to housing. Why is the Liberal government partnering in these exploitative practices and causing harm to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. President, I want to thank my colleague for her question, and I want to say to her and to all Canadians that are watching that this government was the first government that made historic investment in housing. But not only that, we recognize the human right of a house, and we have for the first time named a commissioner to defend the right of tenants, and we'll continue to work with all provinces and municipalities to defend those rights.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
The Bloc is now condemning the same tax increase that they just voted in favour of. Mr. Speaker, it seems that they are changing their position.
That welders won't have to pay this tax. Only the 0.13% wealthiest. Well, all the economists contradict that. The fact that she has 300,000 businesses that she admits will be taxed and all of their owners will be taxed contradicts that as well. So there's one way we could solve this controversy. Will she commit to put in law that no one in the bottom 99.87% will pay any new taxes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, a moment ago, the administration already demonstrated his financial illiteracy. He doesn't understand how the capital gains inclusion rate works. But I want to offer him an opportunity to continue his economic education. Yesterday, the IMF published a report on the Canadian economy. The IMF commented on our capital gains move and said it makes the system more fair, and also said it will have no impact on investment or productivity. That's the IMF, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Speaker, I think we should just let's put aside the disagreement and even the debate on this, and let's come to a resolution here that will bring a lot of calm to the millions of Canadians who are worried about their taxes going up. The minister claims that only the 0.13% wealthiest Canadians will pay. So why not just enshrine that in law? Will she commit today to pass an amendment to her tax bill stating that no one whose income is in the bottom 99.87% will pay any new taxes at all?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to quote some interesting words that were stated in this House of Commons. Quote, "The monstrous increases in capital gains are making the rich vastly richer and creating a kind of aristocratic feudal economy." Do you know who said that, Mr. Speaker? The member for Carleton. We agree the current system is unfair. We are pushing against it. What made the member, after 8 weeks of dithering, change his mind?
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we're simply asking the minister to put her words into law. Okay? So she's claimed that no one who earns less than the top 0.13% of income in the country will be affected. So once again, will she amend her bill to say that no one who is in the bottom 99.87% of income earners will pay any new tax increase whatsoever? Yes or no?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's review what we've learned so far in question period today. First, the Leader of the Official Opposition doesn't even understand how the capital gains inclusion rate works.
Yes, that's right.
That's a problem. Second,
big
the Leader
problem.
of the Official Opposition disavows his own words in this House about capital gains. But probably the most important thing is that the average income in Carleton is $58,400. Their MP is not on the side of working people earning that wage in his own.
That's bottom line.
That is shameful.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm just quoting right now from her own budget speech, where she said, for 99.87% of Canadians, there will be no extra capital gains tax. Okay, she put it in the word in her speech. So why won't she put it in the law?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Government House Leader. Order, order. Order. I'll try it in French. Alors.
Order.
L'Honourable Leader.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
For about 20 years, this leader has been skulking around this place without really much contact with the outside world. In the 9 years that they've been over there, they voted against a child benefit, a dental plan, a prescription drug plan, a child care plan. Every time Canadians look to that person to stand up for their interests, for fairness in Canada, that guy takes a seat, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
I see they've pulled the finance minister off the ice. She can't answer a question. So she mentioned she won't guarantee in law that the bottom 99.87% of Canadians will pay nothing. So let's make it a little bit easier for her. She claimed that she doesn't want welders to have to pay more. Will she amend her bill to ensure that not a single welder anywhere in Canada will be forced to pay this tax increase? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
The more I stand here, the longer question period takes. Yeah,
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
We will take no lessons from these conservatives, Mr. Speaker. Generational fairness is key to Canadians, Mr. Speaker, and that's why in the last budget we presented measures, Mr. Speaker, measures to build this country, measures to invest in our economy, measures to invest in the middle class, measures to help Canadians, Mr. Speakers. And you know what? Our capital gains change will help Canadians. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, can you believe they voted against tax fairness, Mr. Speaker?
Shocking.
Against tax fairness, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we will fight for Canadians and we will fight for the middle class.
the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Are they okay over there?
They're a little wacky.
I won't call them wacko, Mr. Speaker. That's unparliamentary. But I just have a very simple question. And this is for the finance minister if she's not still in hiding. Very simple question. She said she doesn't want welders to have to pay more. Will she put an amendment in her tax bill saying that not one single welder will face a tax increase?
Hey, quiet down. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, in any given year, 0.13% of Canadians will pay a modest increase in their taxable gains. But I hear the leader across who has never seen a support for a single Canadian that he is prepared to vote for, talking about sidelining people. He sidelines that entire caucus in every single question period. We hear from him yawning and misinformation all the time, Mr. Speaker. Unchain the rest of the people over there.
Order. Order. Alors, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please. Order.
Fini, là?
Are we done? Are you done? Not done? All right. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, La Presse described this morning the fiasco that is the CARM application by the Border Services Agency. CARM is like ArriveCan, an app with cost overruns reaching $300 million and counting. Just like with ArriveCan, the CBSA is also behind its development. Just like with ArriveCan, the Coradix firm, now suspended from public tenders, had a small contract in this. In short, a new app, same fiasco, same people in charge, same government. What is the minister doing to get the agency back in order? It's the Wild West there. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, we understand very well the concern of exporters and other Canadian businesses that deal with the Border Services Agency. That is why we have delayed an aspect of the implementation of the application. I'm fully aware of the concerns, and I will ensure the Border Services Agency proceeds in the right way. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. The CARM application is like ArriveCan, a money pit. What's more, it's like Phoenix. It doesn't work. It's a total disaster. It's serious because it's supposed to collect customs duties at the Canada-US border. $3.5 billion flow across the border every day. Imagine the mess if the application doesn't work. That's why, back in March, the International Trade Committee was already asking the agency for documents, including their contingency plans. It's now June, and we've received nothing. Will the minister force the agency to provide the documents so that we can correct this fiasco? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, of course, I will ensure the agency provides the committee with all of the appropriate documents, the documents requested. I've also had a number of discussions with the Border Services Agency in order to ensure the scenario our colleague is talking about doesn't happen, and I will continue to do this work myself with the Border Services Agency. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Liberals are demanding I stop asking questions. I can understand why, because the Finance Minister's gone into hiding and stopped answering them. She's claimed that no one except the rich is 0.13% will pay any tax. But the greatest university economist in Canada, Jack Mintz, has reported that 1.25 million will pay. But let's not dispute who's right or wrong. Will the minister accept an amendment to her bill to ensure that not a single plumber will have to pay any extra taxes under this proposal?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we can see how nervous and how anxious the Conservatives are. They spent 8 weeks terrified of saying anything about capital gains. And today, the Conservative leader is so anxious, he doesn't trust a single member of his caucus to say a word. But you know, Mr. Speaker, I have sympathy for them because they have shown how phony they are. They have had a chance to be on the side of working people, on the side of fairness. They've shown whose side they're really on.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Will the Finance Minister exempt all carpenters from her tax increase, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we presented every single member of this House with a very clear and actually really easy choice. Do you think someone who makes their salary, like that person in Carleton, whose only income is their wage, who's making $58,000 a year, do you think they should pay tax at a higher marginal rate than someone earning capital gains of more than $250,000 a year? It's not complicated, but it's complicated for them.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of restaurant owners who will pay this tax increase on their very first dollar of investment gains that inside a company. That is a fact. So will who earn $58,000 a year. So simple question. If what I'm saying is wrong, there's a very simple solution. Will the minister commit to amending her bill to say that any retiring restaurant owner who's been earning $58,000 a year will be fully exempt from any of these tax increases?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there was once a Conservative Prime Minister. His name was John Diefenbaker. He was from the prairies like me and like the Conservative leader. He set up a Royal Commission on Tax, and Ken Carter, who led that commission, said memorably, a buck is a buck is a buck. He thought that all your income, whether it's a capital gain or you make it through hard work, should be taxed. But these Conservatives have shown their true colors. They are just not on the side of working people, and they're embarrassed.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
John Diefenbaker is from Saskatchewan, where there are lots of farmers. So the member won't commit to amend her law to exempt carpenters or plumbers or retiring modest income independent restaurant owners. So very simple question. Given that we're in a food price crisis, will the finance minister amend her proposal to say that no farmer will pay higher taxes under this plan?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is squirming. The Conservative leader is nervous. And I know why he's nervous, Mr. Speaker, because we presented him yesterday with a very clear choice. You could be on the side of someone who sweats every day, who earns all their money through their paycheck, or you can say someone who is earning in every single year more than $250,000 in capital gains. We know whose side we're on. Now we know whose side they're on too.
Yeah.
The Honourable Member for Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, everyone wants to avoid a shutdown at Canada's two biggest railways, and rail workers deserve the time needed to negotiate a fair deal. But CP and CN seem to be trying to orchestrate a simultaneous work stoppage in order to force the workers' hand. Now, the union has suggested staggering the negotiations in order to minimize the impacts. This seems to be in everyone's best interest, but the companies have rejected it outright. What will the minister do to support the union's very reasonable request?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, what the Minister of Labour will do is make sure that both sides remain at the table and that they are fully supported by our Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service that has a 96% success rate in preventing work stoppages and strikes. We stand with them. They are well supported at the table. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
For 30 years, Johannes Rivor sexually abused children in Nunavut when he was supposed to be a priest. Instead of being tried for his crimes, Rivor escaped to France. The churches failed the victims. The RCMP failed the victims. Now the federal governments keep failing the victims. He died before justice was ever served. People are still hurting. When will this government act to ensure the victims of Rivor get the justice they deserve?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for that very important question. The sad history surrounding the abuses in the north with Reverend Rivor is devastating. Many people have been impacted, and I've been able to speak to many survivors. He passed away recently, yet it doesn't bring justice to those who are seeking justice. We will continue to work and support the families and those who survived, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Winnipeg's downtown is full of historic buildings. One of our most iconic is the old Hudson's Bay building located at the corners of Portage and Memorial Avenues. It holds a storied history for Winnipeggers. A vibrant downtown is vital for a strong economy. Mr. Speaker, over the past few months, our government has been working closely in collaboration with local First Nations to revitalize the Bay building. The ability for First Nations themselves to be at the forefront of such a development is critical. Can the minister responsible for Prairie's Can update this House on the cooperative work underway? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I recently had the honor to make an announcement of $31 million investment into the former Hudson's Bay building in downtown Winnipeg. The plan was developed by the Southern Chiefs organization, includes over 350 affordable housing units, assisted living units for elders, a child care center, and amazing public spaces. I believe that the Southern Chiefs organization, led by Chief Jerry Daniels, are doing what they're doing in Winnipeg stands as a prime example of economic reconciliation that the entire country of Canada can be proud of.
A wonderful grandmother, 93-year-old Liz Diachin, is severing a few lots off of her longtime family farm to give them to her kids and grandkids so that they can have a place to live in this terrible housing crisis. She was surprised to learn she's going to be paying this latest Liberal tax increase. She was asked, "Are you rich?" She said, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm on a pension." Mr. Speaker, will the finance minister amend her bill so that low-income grandmothers who are passing on a little bit of land for their kids to live on will not be hit by this tax increase.
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to share another quote. The wealthiest 1% who own the most expensive and luxurious real estate and have in their portfolios the most stocks and bonds will continue to see their net worth expand, having done nothing, by the way, to deserve that expanded net worth. When they sell those assets, they accrue a capital gain. We think more of it should be taxed. That's a quote from the member from Carleton.
Whoa.
But that was when he was being a fake populist.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Liz Diachin is not among those wealthy 1% the member just described. She has a pension of probably, I'm guessing, $45,000 a year. She's a grandmother who's simply trying to sever off a few lots so that her kids and her grandkids can have a place to live. Those lots have enough value that they will be hit by capital gains tax, and they're over $250,000. So she will pay this. She will pay us the 66% tax. So, very simple question: will the minister amend the law so that this wonderful grandmother does not have to pay higher taxes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Conservative leader is a little bit confused because he seemed to think that those were my words I quoted. I was in fact quoting him. I was quoting his words about the wealthiest 1% and their stock portfolios and luxury real estate. But that was back when the Conservative leader was pretending to be a friend of working people. He was pretending to be on the side of the little guy. Yesterday we learned that is just not true, but we are on the side of fairness.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is true that this government has unjustly enriched the wealthiest 1% with their inflationary policies. So let's just make sure that no one else pays the bill for that. Will the minister accept an amendment to her proposal to ensure that the 99% of lowest income earners do not pay this tax increase, so this wonderful grandmother does not have to pay the bill?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, the leader opposite has spent the entire question period talking about electricians and farmers and fishers.
Start from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The leader opposite cites electricians, carpenters, plumbers. Mr. Speaker, I come from family, as do many of us, of farmers and electricians and people who bring home a T4 slip at the end of the year. Those people who earn an honest paycheck, what do they expect from their government? They expect tax fairness. We are asking all those who pay who gain $250,000 on their investments in a given year, 0.13% of the population, to pay a little bit more. I don't know any electricians who are in that category, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, if that were true, then they would be prepared to put in writing in the law that no farmer, fisher, or electrician will pay any new tax under this increase. Will they?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
What will be in the law is that anyone who makes a capital gain over $250,000, the first $250,000 are exempt, 50% inclusion rate. Over $250,000 in a given year will pay 66%. That's less than Brian Mulroney asked them to pay, and it gets us closer closer to the fairness that who's asking for? The electricians, the farmers, the teachers, the nurses, the fishers, the people in Canada who expect us to stand up for tax fairness and against that!
The honourable member for Rivière-du-Nord. Allah, deal with these Zionist attackers. Allah, deal with the enemies of the people of Gaza. Allah, find and exterminate them all. Spare not one of them. That was Adil Sharkawi in Montreal on October 28, 2023. He suffered no consequences because in Canada, the law allows you to call for the extermination of an entire people under cover of religion. The RCMP want to modernize the criminal code so they're better equipped to deal with hate crimes. The Bloc is proposing to do away with this religious exemption. Will the minister support us? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, there is no form of hate that this government has ever accepted. We will always combat all forms of hatred, whether it's racism, Islamophobia, discrimination, anti-Semitism, or what have you. Religion should not be an excuse for propagating hate, and that is why the government has its own bill to fight online hate. I hope the Bloc will support that. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the government says Canada is a secular country, but it isn't. This religious exemption is the opposite of secularism. It makes it possible to commit a crime that would otherwise be punishable by law. Does it make sense to let hate speech hide behind a god when it incites violence? Should the criminal code contain religious exemptions that couch in prayer a call to exterminate people? It's not right. The RCMP knows it, and so does the government. Mr. Speaker, will they vote for the Bloc's bill and get rid of this religious exemption? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a secular country, and hate speech is not allowed or tolerated. We've always combated it, and that's precisely why we have tabled legislation to fight online hatred, including Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Whether hatred is in the streets or online, it does harm. It does harm to our society, and I hope the Bloc will vote along with us.
Mr. Speaker, the minister proposes this new tax increase on every single dollar that a fisherman earns inside of his small business. There is no $250,000 exemption for him. Even if he just earns $1,000, he'll have to pay the tax increase. We forget it's not just our wonderful farmers that feed us, but it's also our fishermen. Will the finance minister amend her bill to ensure that there will not be a single fish harvester anywhere in Canada that will face a tax increase?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I grew up in Atlantic, Canada. I grew up as the grandson of 2 dairy farmers. I grew up around an awful lot of fishers. I grew up around people who worked with their hands and didn't think that electricians got electricity from the sky, but rather they got it in, plugged from the wall. What I would like to challenge the leader to do is he should gather all of the electricians who think that they should not pay over $250,000 on capital gains. I'll get together all the electricians who think that a buck is a buck is a buck. We'll compare.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Will they exempt electricians from this tax hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for the past couple of years, the Conservative leader has been cosplaying a friend of union workers. But yesterday, we called his bluff, and they know it. Here's what the president of the CLC said. With this vote, the Conservative leader has shown he believes that an ordinary worker flipping burgers for a living should be taxed on 100% of their income, while his CEO friends making millions from flipping stocks should be taxed on only half of their income. That is what the Conservatives believe, and it is shameful.
Wow. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there are many union workers who have rental properties that they invest in. Will the minister make the commitment that no union worker will have to pay this tax increase?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I don't know which union workers that he's talking to, but the union workers that I talk to and that we talk to and dialogue with and that the finance minister just quoted are people who believe in solidarity, who believe in caring for others, who believe in dental plans and child care and the Canada Child Benefit and every other single thing that this leader has voted against. The very things that this fairness tax measure will pay for. So yes, Mr. Speaker, we accept the leader's challenge. Let's talk to union members and see what side of the equation they come down on.
The Honourable Member for Charlottetown.
Mr. Speaker, all Canadians deserve a safe and affordable home. We know that people in more vulnerable situations have a hard time finding affordable housing that meets their needs. We need to build more housing and make the housing market fairer for all. Can the Minister of Veterans Affairs tell us what the government is doing to ensure that Canadians have access to safe, affordable housing? The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend and colleague for that important question. Our government is working hard to make housing fairer for Canadians all across the country. Earlier this year in my riding, I announced $6.7 million in funding to help build new affordable housing. This funding will help house and support homeless people, as well as women and children fleeing domestic violence. Our government will always be there to defend Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Est-ce que la ministre
Would the minister agree to an amendment to her tax hike that would exempt carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and farmers? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, what I can tell you is that fairness is at the core of Canadian identity. People in Shawinigan and in Carleton understand that in a fair society, fairness is fundamental. And that's why in our last budget, we made changes to the capital gains tax, which will enable us to reinvest in the economy, in our workers, in housing. But surprise, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are against tax fairness. Imagine they're against tax fairness. We on this side of the House will always be on the side of workers and the middle class and on the side of Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Data, Dr. Jack Mintz calculated that 50% of those who will pay this tax increase earn less than $120,000 a year, and 10% earn less than $18,000 a year. No, we don't have to dispute these numbers. Why don't we just make it simple and make it clear? Will the minister accept an amendment to exempt anyone who earns less than $120,000 a year from this tax increase? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, actually, there is a $250,000 threshold. So the new rate kicks in only after you've made $250,000 in capital gains in a given year. So I do want to continue to help educate the Conservative leader. I'm going to point him to...
I can't hear any of that, so I'm going to allow the Deputy Prime Minister to restart.
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker, because it does seem that the Conservative leader, who for baffling reasons wants to take all the questions, maybe to show off his ignorance, doesn't actually understand.
I would ask the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister maybe to retract that and finish that. I gave enough grace to allow to repeat. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Okay, I'm sorry. I retract that. So let me just say it was baffling to me that the Conservative leader is taking all of the questions to show he doesn't really understand what we're doing. But it gives me a chance to explain it to him. So it only kicks in after 250,000 of capital gains does this new level.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I just gave that minister more than 20 opportunities to prove that what she was saying was true. I asked her, and she refused, if she'd give an exemption to her tax hike to carpenters, farmers, fishermen, plumbers, union workers, restaurant owners, electricians. She said no. She said no to exempting people who earn less than $120,000 a year. Why? Because we know that that's exactly who she's going after. She's going to rob the people who pay the bills in this country to pay for her obese and out-of-control spending. Why won't she finally end the ripoff?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday our government gave every single Conservative MP a chance to stand on the side of working people, of teachers, of nurses, of electricians, of carpenters, of welders. They cannot wiggle out of the shocking position they took. They took a position on the side of multimillionaires against working people and against fairness. But now all of Canadians know where they stand.
The Honourable Member for St. John Rothsay.
I come from a community that is filled with good, hard-working people. The small city realities don't always look the same as someone who lives in big urban centres, but they do face many of the same challenges when it comes to housing. I'm proud that our government has stepped up to tackle the housing crisis. This challenge requires bold, outside-the-box thinking, including seeking innovative ideas.
I'm going to take a break here. Hold on. And I will allow the Honourable Member to restart. The Honourable Member from Rothsay has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I come from a community, St. John Rothsay, that is filled with good, hard-working people. Their small city realities don't always look the same as someone who lives in big urban centres, but they do face many of the same challenges when it comes to housing. I'm proud that our government has stepped up to the plate to tackle the housing crisis. This challenge requires bold, outside-the-box thinking, including innovative ideas from all corners of our country. Can the Minister of Rural Economic Development and ACOA tell us how our government is ensuring that smaller regions can play a role in the Team Canada approach to housing solutions?
Honourable Minister of Rural Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My friend from St. John Rothsay is right. Innovative housing solutions are all across the country, and that's why our government is investing in companies like Kent Homes in New Brunswick, who are doing state-of-the-art home manufacturing. Our regional development agencies like ACOA are helping turbocharge innovative construction. Through Budget 24, the agencies are investing in new building technologies like panelized 3D construction, modular homes. Canadians have rejected the opposition leader's weak do-nothing approach to housing. We are getting houses built. We have a real plan in place, and we are getting the job done. Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Just 3 years after our London family were murdered in an Islamophobic attack, another London family's home was set on fire. The police are investigating this crime as hate-motivated, as the family publicly expressed support for Palestinian human rights. Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian racism, and all forms of hate must be condemned wherever it occurs, and this government needs to do more to root out racism so people can feel safe. Will the Liberals finally step up to provide support to my community and all those impacted by hate-motivated attacks?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Over these past 8 years, we have worked extremely hard to make sure that we are combating racism, that we are combating Islamophobia, anti-Semitism amongst all of our communities all across the country. We have had so many great achievements, including what is our now anti-racism strategy. We will continue to work with partners on all levels of government, including civil society, to ensure that we are supporting communities like that, members. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this government repeatedly said that the Canada Disability Benefit would lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty, and in doing so, they gave the disability community hope. But now we know it was all a charade. Documents recently tabled show, by the government's own estimates, less than 2% of folks with disabilities will be lifted out above the poverty line, and not till 2028. How does the Deputy PM justify extinguishing this hope, and will she right this wrong?
The Honourable Minister.
Time in Canadian history, we have a federal disability benefit that is going to strengthen the financial security of more than 600,000 persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, the initial investment of $6.1 billion in Budget 2024 is the next step to get this benefit out to Canadians. We know, Mr. Speaker, that there's more to do. We're committed to doing this work, also alongside provinces and territories, to make sure that there are no clawbacks. Mr. Speaker, we're committed to this, and we're going to get it done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And that's all the time we have for question period today. A point of order, the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I believe if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent following.
I'm already hearing a number of the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. I just want to. You should hear it first. Folks, give me a second here. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition has the floor.
Pursuant to standing orders.
I don't even know what he's asking for.